All right. Here we are, back again, folks. You know how we do it every single Sunday. You can check the receipts. We have been doing this every Sunday since I forgot, I think was beginning of football season at this point. Stay hired Sunday. And today, actually, I personally have the pleasure of doing this show in front of are you guys a championship hockey team? And like, what's the I'm doing this in front of a tournament of a young high school hockey players. And for me, it's kind of rewarding seeing that I built kind of the business based on high school athletics as a former high school football coach. All of these things kind of coming together. It's just a really, really rewarding moment for me, folks, given that I get to do this stuff. So if you're new to my world, let me just introduce myself to you real quick. My name is Aswan Crookshank, former Division I college football player and current 5-time published author and educator. And what I do is I created a system in which you can use the lessons that you get from high school youth football, those championship high school football teams, and you can align that lesson to your business and to business owners and how to have your teams move very efficiently in the workplace. And Kimberly?
I am Kimberly Blue, founder of Ardent HR Solutions. I help business owners and those who work for business owners navigate the world of work.
All right, folks. So let's get right into it. As you guys normally know, we normally do here. We've talked about quite a bit. You know, I'm trying my best not to bring up the Redskins ass kicking that we took last week, 55-23 belt to ass that we took. That was a rough one. Philly, you had to do us like that.
I didn't even text you. I didn't even text you. I was
that one. I was doing a whole lot of talking, and the thing is, I'm not a big moral victory person because I said it the next day. This is national football. You know, it's pro football. We don't do moral victories here. You blink your eye, and the team could change within the year. So there's no guarantee you're going to get there. And I'm glad. I'm not happy that the Redskins lost and the Commanders lost, but I'm happy in the lessons that it provides as business owners. Where look, you got to get it done now. You got to take advantage of the opportunity now because you just don't know when you're going to be back. And in fact, saying all of that brings me to today's topic, which is, as you see on the screen, legally protecting yourself. All right, folks, this is something that, especially if you're in our world where you're doing work on a Sunday, where it doesn't feel like work, where you're doing things that you're very passionate about, you're doing things that you would do for free if it was feasible. It's so easy to get drummed into doing these like activities without having the proper documentation and the proper legal work in order to do it, and eventually land yourself in a situation where you can be in trouble if certain waivers aren't signed, if certain legal documents aren't presented, all that kind of stuff that can get really, really tedious when you're so focused on your passion. So today we are going to really dive into what needs to be done when you're talking about legally protecting yourself. So before I get into the stories at all, do you want to interject at all, add anything before I get into what we're going to discuss?
This could be anything from an employee making a complaint. It could be from an employee who wants to document something, say they brought a safety concern, and then they feel like somebody's not giving them the hours. So legally protecting yourself in the workplace is a very broad subject, and we're only going to be talking about a few examples today.
Yes. So the fact that it's broad, and I'm really, really happy that you used the term broad subject because it's so broad, you as an individual has the ability to take the initiative to protect yourself. And I'll give you guys an example. Just 2 days ago, so for those of you who don't know, I teach at a school that's K through 5. All right, when you're talking about that age of kids, there's a lot that can go on. Trust me when I tell you, I've been around kids who were younger than that, where it's like, you touch them the wrong way, they say this, you may have said this. I, in fact, ended up at this school because I got put on administrative leave twice at a previous place for stuff that I didn't even realize I had said and that the kid heard, and it got back to the parents, all that kind of stuff, right? So we were in a situation this past Friday in which we were outside, and it's myself and another, I'm not going to put anybody's name out there, but another colleague of mine who also played football with me. Obviously, we're very into athletics. Obviously, when we're outside and, we're doing drills, we're excited. And, things just happen when you're dealing with kids. But we're trained to do this. We're certified coaches to do this. And it just so happened that one of the children complained about hitting her head or something of that nature. And the thing is, I know this particular kid, and I know that if she's actually hurt, then she would have come and said, "Hey, I'm hurt, and I really can't do this because I've known her for so long at this particular time." However, you had other colleagues. She went to another colleague of ours and said, "Hey, my head hurts," and then they came at us on some, well, you gotta call the parents and write it up and this, that, and the third. So what happened was the person I was doing the drills with, he looks at me, he goes, "She never hit her head." It never happened, and he actually had, because he happened to be recording this on his phone. It wasn't the recorder from the school. He was recording it on his phone, and he literally shows me she fell forward, rolled over, and then continued to play, and then said she needs it. And then he actually showed the parents to make sure he and I were free from any sort of allegations, any sort of legal problem. So I appreciate, if you're listening, and I don't want to bring your name up, but definitely appreciate you for doing that, because what he did just in that moment was he legally protected us. And by the way, for you guys who don't know, he's a former military, he's a former veteran, so he's incredibly by the book, incredibly strategic, incredibly making sure certain things are done. But what he did was he protected both of us to say, "Hey, look, there's something missing here," because had it gone the other way and a kid just says these things because they're kids and they want to get out of work, then we could have been in trouble about, "Hey, we're not allowed to do this program, we got to get put on this, we got to do this." And as I was thinking about how bad it could have gotten, as I always do for you guys who regularly tune in now, I hit up my HR professional and say, "Hey man, we got to talk about some of these things that we can do to make sure we're legally protecting ourselves," because this is out of, in my opinion, it's out of a business owner's hands in some way. When you're, an employee and you're working in your passion, it's out of like a manager's hands, and it's all really going to be based on he say, she say, which is why whenever you try something new, you got to make sure that there's some legal parameters that are being taken, so you're not in trouble. And when you say broad, and I guess here's the question: when you say broad, how can someone make sure, and I know I gave an example with the, recording the video, but let's say somebody doesn't have access to, how can someone go about thinking about these things on a day-to-day when it's not necessarily their job to think about it, it's somebody else, they kind of paint it as somebody else's job to do the legal stuff? How can you make it so that they're focused on these things as they're going about their day-to-day when it's not their job, quote unquote?
So it's a good question, but because we always don't have a video to record something.
Right. That's why
So
I was
what?
so appreciative. Like when he showed me that, in fact, 'cause I was over with the car. Like people know when I get, you probably have seen it too, when I just get absolutely annoyed with certain people. So I had left for the hour just because I couldn't be around them, because now all of a sudden she starts. So me personally, I blow up in situations like that, or I can tend to shut down because I get annoyed with that. But when I came back after an hour of me talking with me and God and doing our thing and say, "Hey, Aswan, this is just part of life, right?" I came back to the school and then he showed me the video, and I'm like, "All right, good luck, thank you." Thank you for keeping
Right.
me, safe with these things. So anyway, go ahead.
So the one thing I say all the time, if you don't document it, it did not
Hmm.
happen.
Wow.
So that goes from, if you're sitting with an employee doing a 101, follow up with
Hmm.
an email. Thanks for meeting with me today. We discussed these points. Please reach out if there's any questions. That's
Right.
something simple. You just make it a habit. You make
Hmm.
be disciplined about doing it. Don't tell yourself you're going to do it later, because it will not happen. Document things as it happens.
So
And
just
that
so
is
we're
the
clear though,
number
'cause
one way to protect
that's
yourself.
something I want to be clear, like, because when you say meeting, can you describe what you mean by meeting? Because there have been many times, and like whether it's not, this isn't even talking about education now. This is in fitness, this is in athletics, where people can be just having one-on-one conversation in the
Right.
professional environment. You're saying make sure you're documenting that too. Like, how are you defining a meeting?
So a meeting doesn't have to be so
Hmm.
formal. A
Right.
meeting can be very informal, walking down the aisle or walking in a
Hmm.
gym or whatever that looks like. It could be a 5 minute conversation. But if
Yeah.
you're discussing something that is pertains to business, then it's best to, number one, you can
Right.
remember what you discussed, and
Hmm.
so can the other person. So how you do that is by documenting it. Even if you're just like, "Hey, enjoyed talking today. I look forward to discussing bullet point one or two."
Hmm.
Um, reach out with any questions. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a reminder for yourself, a reminder for them of what you're going to do next or what you're not going to do next, depending on the situation.
Right. All right. So you said the right word pertaining to business. And here's a point that I want to make sure I'm making to anyone that's listening now. When you're when you're doing what you're really passionate about, all right, when you care about it, all right, what the one thing that myself and everyone that teaches, period, because it's damn sure it's the money, is we care about the kids and we care about seeing the kids become better members of society. We are passionate about teaching them things. So when it comes to a document about business, you have to care about the business. And this is again where I want you to kind of speak on this is when you have folks out there who are so consumed with the idea of just, I want to get my check every 2 weeks and F off and forget everything else. Are they more, or at least I guess you can speak on this too, is are they more inclined to say, look, I don't really feel like documenting these things because it ain't my job and I ain't do it? Or do you find it to where people who are working in their passion, like the one thing I'll say about myself is you're working in a field where you're very passionate about, where now everything you do, you're going to make sure you document it as if you're the owner of the business. Can you kind of touch on those two principles right now? Because what I'm hearing from cynics, as I heard you say, document everything, I'm hearing them say, man, I ain't got time for that. I'm already hearing the chat. I'm hearing the people here like, look, Kimberly, look, I got my job, I got my kids, I got my this, I got this, I hear them already in my ears. I ain't got time to do that. So can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, they have this great thing called memo
Yeah.
recorder on your phone. So if you
Uh-huh.
don't want to, type up the email, you can go ahead and do a voice memo. They have AI of reading too for meetings if you do it online. That'll actually take the notes for you and then email it to you when the meeting's done.
Hmm.
Okay, but what, I'm very passionate about helping people. But
Right.
in that passion that I have for helping people, I also work with people who may not be the happiest people all the time. They're coming
Hmm.
to me for a reason,
Right.
right? And
Exactly.
so, in order to make sure that we're on the same page, if you don't do it, then you're lazy. Stop being lazy. Be disciplined and take care of your business. For those
Right.
workers, that's something different. Like they don't think about, legal things all the time. And even some business
Exactly.
owners, you may pay somebody to do it, or you may be on the side where you're not thinking about it. But if a significant event happens and you're
Hmm.
discussing employment or you're discussing an event like this kid hitting the head, that
Hmm.
could be, turn into a different situation, then
Right.
you document it. I'm not saying, hey, how are you today? And then I'm going to go document it. No, I'm not talking
Hmm.
about that. I'm talking about
Right.
significant events or an event where you are providing advice or getting feedback from somebody that you
Hmm.
may or may not need later, but document it. Because what if you're giving somebody something to do? Hey, in the
Hmm.
next week, I want you to do these three things. But then
Hmm.
there's no follow up from you. How are you
Hmm.
going to remember what you told them to do if you don't write it down?
Right.
So,
And also, too, so much of it is using your common sense, guys. All right, and I'll tell. I could probably I could spend a whole hour on situation after situation and things that I've actually lived through. I'll give you one now because I don't know if I have told might have told this story on one of these shows. I'm not sure if it was here, but when just a couple like at the beginning of the year, I became one of the bus drivers at the school. And this is a brand new charter school, so we don't have public funding. We're not a public school, and it's not all tied up in the government, the stuff that the public school does. So when it comes to us driving or picking the kids up to school and dropping them back to their houses and all that, there's a lot of things that can get really sticky. A lot. Could you imagine? Again, you're with kids and you're dropping them off from the school. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. Which again, if you drop them off with the wrong person, all hell can break loose. So when it's me literally communicating with the parent of the kid to tell them where they need to be and all that kind of stuff. And if a there's situations where the dad will say it's okay to drop them off with somebody else, and I don't have time to go and say no, you got to pick them up from school because it's what the letter of the law says, all that kind of stuff. So what we decide to do, and it's not just myself, but it's several people, the people that have driven the bus with me, what we actually decide to do in that moment, I'm talking about in the moment, this is a decision that we had to make in the moment, was, hey, if the person says it's okay to drop them off by the neighbor, I take a picture with the kid and the neighbor, and then I send it to the actual parent and get the confirmation text from the parent, and then that keeps us legally from getting involved in anything that could have been detrimental. That was us using our common sense. All right, that was stuff
You
that we
documented it.
would exactly. We simply
Otherwise, it
documented.
didn't happen.
Exactly. And then again, God forbid there's something happens that's not the right person, or, we have to go. All of that stuff, was removed when we decided to use our common sense. And I tell that story because I wanted to make sure that you can, I mean, now this was a situation obviously with where kids, but can you document, or can you talk about us probably maybe some examples in which people can probably use their common sense when they're in situations that can come up, that may or may not come up, in which, again, if it doesn't happen, the repercussions of you not doing this can be absolutely catastrophic, versus you just finding something kind of in the comments in the moment to make sure it gets done, and then you can sleep better at night. Because I can tell you from experience, I slept better at night knowing that I got the text from the dad to say, yeah, that's her, you guys are good, go. Like, I slept better at night knowing that we were fine because you heard it from me.
So one thing that comes to mind, you could be walking, through your place of employment, an employee, or walking with the employee. And this pertains to leaders. It could pertain to an hourly employee or someone not in leadership, but you're walking, with them, and they said, hey, I fell down the stairs and I really hurt my foot and I'm having a hard time walking. Oh, I hope you feel better. And you keep it moving.
Mhm.
A month or two down the road, she comes back, and this person, he or she, comes back and says, well, I told Kimberly that I fell down and my foot was hurting. She just said, feel better. Now, if we would have documented it, if we would have stopped for 1 second and documented that and then advised. So, one thing is, if you have a handbook, follow your handbook. You have to follow your own rules that you put into place. Secondly, like you said, common sense. If someone's fallen at work, hurt their foot, then there's a process. Ensure that they do it, and you follow up that they do it. You have to sometimes stop and think, when something like this happens, because that could have just been really bad, if they didn't do that. And a lot of times they get sued because they didn't take care of things right away like they should have.
Yeah.
That's
In
one
fact,
example.
yeah, no, well, it's worked. Again, I could talk about this for hours, but it has been in many situations. I actually remember when I was coaching at high school. It was my last season coaching in high school, and this was around the time where concussions were a huge, huge deal. And it just so happened that one of the players had a concussion the week before, but for some reason the head coach let him play this week, and he went down again. And I was talking to one of the parents of the other players who's like, he's a lawyer. He's like actually in it. And I was telling him about the situation. He looks at me, you have to protect yourself, Osborne, because if this goes down, and you had absolutely nothing to do with that. You weren't the head coach. You were just the assistant coach. And I was volunteering there at that. I wasn't even getting paid. But, if the head coach as leaders make a decision, this is kind of where I want to take the conversation. As leaders who are making these decisions, like the one I just mentioned, where you let a kid play who had a concussion the week before, you don't ask any of the coaches, you just decide you're going to let him play because you love the kid and, you have your whatever feelings. This kind of stuff ripples around the organization. It creates a very, very horrible, horrible culture. So as we transition this now to like business owners, which is primarily the people that we serve as it is, what advice do you have for them as they're going about building their businesses? Because I actually heard Kevin Plink say this, who he runs Under Armour, and I remember some of the best advice I've ever actually heard on the internet. You guys should go look it up and listen to it yourself. He said that he doesn't own the patents for tight stretchy t-shirts. Okay, the lawyers and the tax IDs and the all the stuff that come with running a business, all that stuff is great. but go find out if your product can sell. And if your product can sell, then just keep doing it faster and better. And the patents and the lawyers and the logos and all that stuff will come later on. And when you think about that reality, business owners run the risk of, okay, look, my stuff is selling. I could pay someone to help me sell it more. The money's coming in, and the legal stuff now gets put on the back burner. So when you're speaking to business owners that are starting out, or are maybe they're not just starting out, or they have a kind of a lucrative amount of sales and they're able to hire people, what exactly are you telling them? What's the advice? What's the general advice? And the questions I just put in like questions that we can answer later. But what is the general advice that you sort of give them as they are, running their business now? And it's like, okay, now I got to bring people in to help with the growth.
So we've talked about this several times before, but you
Hmm.
have to set up the framework. It has to have a solid foundation and framework, which means there's going to be, SOPs, there's going to be handbooks, there's going to be guidelines that
Hmm.
employees have to follow. And if you don't start it as soon as you hire employee one, you're setting yourself up for failure, because we live and work in a different time. It's
Hmm.
not the bro code or the, hey, everything will be okay. Okay. It's not that anymore. So set it up from the beginning of
He said the
how you
Rams are
want.
the bro code. Yeah, there's a lot of that
Yes.
in this world.
And you
Yeah, I've
can't,
heard
but
quite a
you can't
bit.
depend on that, because you know what?
Yeah,
I can love you today and tomorrow, we're just like the Redskins. They're going to let me down.
yeah, they're gonna let you down.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that's how people are. It'll change in
Yeah.
a second. So make sure that you have a strong foundation, partner with somebody that can
Hmm.
help you develop, and then you can change it and revise it as time goes on. But set it
Hmm.
up to begin. Take ownership of the business that you're going to have and set it
Hmm.
up with a strong foundation. That
Yes.
is the best advice that I can give.
Yes. All right. So I think you covered that absolutely perfectly. Because again, as like I was saying in the beginning, pretty much everyone gets into business because it's something they're very passionate about, and it's something that they would do for free, but they figured out a way to make money from it. But the love for it and the core of it is just going out and selling the stuff. Just like I use the example of Kevin playing, the love for selling tight, stretchy T-shirts was something he loved doing. The business legalities of it that came after the sales were made, so it can be easily lost in the sauce. As far as the questions that I just put in, guys, this is the first time I'm reading them. It's the first time she's reading. I made it so I put the questions in right like right while we're recording, just so you guys know that we know our stuff and we're authentic as we answer. So these are not prepared. All right. First question I got. So let me read the prompt. Actually, I prompted it saying, create 5 questions about legally protecting yourself in business, and these were the 5 they came up with. What legal structures, LLC, S Corp, C Corp, offer the best protection against personal liability in business? I'll briefly touch on this because I created an LLC because I was just in business for myself. But I'm sure you'll have a better, probably more of a broader perspective on this one.
So, I created a monster with the chat GPT with you.
You did,
So
yeah, you
I
did,
think
yeah, you
I
did.
think
I'm
it's
telling you,
great.
man. And the thing is, too, before we did this, so like you guys know, man, I write all the time, and it doesn't take away from my ability to write. Like before we started
No,
recording, I wrote a whole article that just said, "Hey, Chat GPT, proofread it for me and make it sound like me." Boom, another article's done. So like, it's not like what I thought it was, where it's going to take away my creativity. It's like just
no, it doesn't.
enhancing. So thank you. Yes, you did create a monster.
So the answer is LLC. And
Okay,
so,
good.
yeah, so you're absolutely right, because it protects us, and keeps our business separate from our personal funds and self. Could they sue both? Could people sue both? Yes, but that protection with the LLC is what most companies start as.
Yes, figured that would be it. All right, question number 2 is, what key contract should every business have in place to protect against disputes and liabilities? Ooh, oh man. From my perspective, I am more of a sales guy. So when it says key contracts, I'm thinking about how the process that is leading to sales, what contracts are in place to make it so you have sole rights for that thing being sold, whatever your number one seller is, if that makes sense. And since we're using the Redskins as an example, the reason it took so long for them to change that logo and change the name is because that logo with the Indian there was a lot of licensing contracts and deals in place that made it so no one was allowed to use that logo. And people knew, or at least the owners of the Redskins knew, that was the actual selling point. People were paying money to have that logo on their body. So whatever the contract is about protecting a certain thing that's being sold, and that would be the best thing. But you can probably, I don't know
So
why I'm saying
contracts.
this, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so contract, I think more of policy. So a non-disclosure, an
Mhm.
agreement, non-disclosure agreement where you're protecting the information that you're providing them. So this is my product, this is what I'm selling, and you cannot disclose it, and you have that verbiage in there. So that's one. An employee handbook, how to do each function, a standard operating procedure, because it
Mhm.
protects you because even though they can't go out and sell your product or sell your service, you still have to have the why behind it or how you do it in order
Mhm.
to protect it, right?
Yeah.
So I would say, the number one thing is a non-disclosure agreement. Making sure that they don't disclose. But there's a lot of there's a lot that they should have that comes to mind when you're talking about selling or providing a service and you're teaching someone else to do it.
All right, cool. Now, number three, I'm gonna have to screen share on this one because how can now you're talking my language, right? How can intellectual property, trademarks, patents, copyright safeguard my brand and products from being copied? All right, so I will show you when I hear the word intellectual property, because I actually did
Mhm.
this earlier this week on one of my live streams. So let me see if I could pull this up here, because we're going to do it in real time so Miss Kimberly can see it. All right, are you guys seeing the screen?
I
So
am.
when we say intellectual property, I'm going to type in move swiftly thought. All right, bang. This is the first thing that comes up. There's no owning, and the thing is, there's no patent. I didn't buy anything for move swiftly thought. I just wrote the book. I wrote the book named Swiftly, and I have the podcast, and I do everything from the kind of the move swiftly lens. So
Mhm.
when you say how can intellectual property, trademarks, patents, copyrights safeguard my brand and products from being copied, is it possible that somebody else comes and says, okay, I'm going to be your one and only move swiftly speaker, I'm going to use move swiftly on products? Yeah, but again, when you type in like the public opinion, the battle for public opinion, when you hear move swiftly, you're gonna think of this guy. Your thoughts on that? Because this one gets a little like, you hear IP and it's like, okay, you work hard to create an IP and create a brand and image for yourself, especially online, and then can somebody else come in and take it? How does that work? Let's speak on that a little bit.
I mean, even if you have a patent, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
if you have that, I could grab your logo online
Mm-hmm.
and go do something and say, okay, yep, this is my logo and I did it. It's ethical. Could you sue them? Yes, you could. But really branding yourself, and that's what that is. The Move Swiftly, your logo is your brand. That is, just like my brand is very
Mm-hmm.
motivational, right?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
that is my brand. That's who I am. They
Yeah.
can't take that from you because it's
Yeah.
you.
Yes. Okay. But this is the part I love about business, because you're right. It's not unethical or not illegal to go and try to take art and stage solutions or HR solutions, but anybody that has any common sense, if you want to actually build something reliable, you won't be able to survive in business with that, because you're putting in the work and you're making sure your face is a part of it. You're making sure you're
Yes.
speaking. You're not just simply saying, "Oh, this is my company," and buy my shit. No, it's actually you knowing your shit and doing the work and making sure if anybody looks it up, just like I just showed you, if anybody looks it up, this is what's popping up day in and day out. So you can't just move swiftly and say, okay, it's mine.
Oh,
You
it's
can
mine
tell
now.
them,
Right.
but then get ready for an actual fight, because it'll be something where you're gonna have to stop as one from doing it when it's already planted all over the internet as it is. So
I mean, there's
Next question.
ways, I could tell you there's a lot of people out. I mean, we could talk an hour just on this, but
Mhm.
there's ways that
That could
people
be
can
next
take
week's
what
topic.
somebody does and emulate it and
Mhm.
make it like you or make it like me, but they're not going to be us, right? And people will quickly identify them as fraud and not themselves.
Hold
So,
on. Well, let me just. I know we're getting over time, but I got to show this example really, really
okay.
quick because I did a I did an article on this, and I want to make sure I bring every time it gets brought up. I typed in the Jordan brand, and look at what comes up. Nike. If you were to go to Jordan sneakers, it all is under that umbrella of Nike. Okay, so it is still under Nike's brand, but Jordan's name is so big that he was able to create his own IP, his own logo, his own thing underneath something that was already bigger. That
Right.
is when you're putting your face behind a business and you're making sure you're in front of it so you
Yep.
have your own reputation. So
I mean,
that
who wouldn't want to be
I
behind Nike? I mean, everybody, when you're building a business and a brand,
yeah.
that's I think branding is one of the hardest and challenging things. It's
Mhm.
consistency, being
It's a
consistent.
lifelong job. It's a lifelong job.
It
You have to
is
do it. You have to believe it. You have to breathe it. You have to want it. You have
every
to
day.
literally 24 hours a day have it in your mind what it is you're going to be doing to help your brand. So don't get into it if you're not about that life. So we'll leave it at that. All right. What steps should I take to ensure compliance with employment laws and protect myself from lawsuits by employees or contractors? We sort of already answered that one, but if you have anything to add, go ahead.
Again, having that framework, putting policies and procedures in place, because that is how you're going to protect yourself.
Mhm.
Making sure that you do have a partner like Art and HR Solutions that can
Yep.
help you through that, because it is
Exactly.
different by state. Florida is a right to work state where you are. I'm in Virginia, we're a right to work state, but there's still nuances with that.
Yep.
Because we're a right to work state, but if you have a handbook and you don't follow your own procedures, you can
Mhm.
still get in legal. There have those legal ramifications for that as well. So having a great partner that you can lean on, I think, would be your best bet to develop your employee compliance, especially when it comes to because they change. They're
Yeah.
just this year. There's been several that have changed already,
Yeah.
so stay
I'm
aware of
glad
the
you
changes.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that because you're right. When it comes to the work you do, so few people know about you existing that they try to do it themselves. Where they would have saved them money, saved themselves a ton of money on the back end if they would have just paid you some sort of a contractor fee
Mm,
to do it for them. That way, they know, hey, I'm protected because I have someone that is their actual contract and what they do, and it can be
yep.
written in the contract. Hey, you're going to help me, stay on top of all these legal things that I don't want to do myself. So that it's just not. So sometimes it's just not knowing that people like you exist.
That's true. It's
Uh,
true. And it is a
And the
lot, and
final,
there is a lot to learn. If you don't do it all the time, it's really
Mhm.
hard. It's really hard to try to stay up with it. So I
Right.
get it.
And this one is actually kind of very, really relevant considering what happened in California when we're talking about insurance. And me personally, I know everyone's probably guilty of it. All of us try to save money on insurance. Every last one of us. We don't want to have to pay no damn insurance for nothing. All right. I personally prolong those payments all the time. I hate having to pay it, but when I got pulled over, about 10 years ago, and I got pulled over driving a car without insurance and they took it and I had to figure it out at that point. That's when I realized, look, you better bite it. You better bite the bullet and pay your damn insurance every month. So,
It is
I'll
worth
read the
it.
question. I'll let you take it away. Yeah. How can
There
business
is
insurance,
nothing to
general
take away. You
liability,
said it.
professional
Buy
liability, cyber
it.
insurance, shield life from financial risk? So I'll let you kind of take it away and close out on this one.
Okay. I mean, you said it. I mean,
Yeah,
perfect. Just do it. Just buy it because you
that's how
don't
you
know.
do
You don't
it.
you don't know when you need it until you need it, and then it's too
That's how
late.
you need it. Yeah. So
And
yeah.
so making sure that's part of that framework that I'm talking about when
Mhm.
you're starting a business. I have a checklist too. And actually, I'll send it for, the subscribers, the checklist on opening a business because that insurance is one of those things that you have to have. And there's so many different ones. So where do you start? So I'll definitely get that over to you so you can put that out there.
All right, cool. Let me just make sure. Good. All right, good. All this time we're talking, I forgot to like repost and stuff. But you guys can catch the replay. A lot of gems were dropped, and as you guys can see, it is only getting better over here in the Stay Hired Sunday world. We're simply learning how to use the internet in real time. Sure, everybody who's been in here from the day one is really proud of us. So proud of me, per se, for getting these things done. Again, make sure if you are interested to tap into the Patreon link, patreon.com/Osborne. 44. We're getting this thing moving. I'm back from a lot of traveling that I was doing last month, and we're really getting focused on making sure that gets going this month. I'll give you the last word.
If you do need help setting up your framework and all the things we talked about today, visit Ardent HR Solutions. And amazing as usual, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you guys. All right. We'll talk more soon. See you guys next week. Later.